I want to tell you about the morning I finally understood why some people seem to glide through life while the rest of us push boulders uphill. It wasn't in a boardroom, or a meditation retreat, or anywhere you'd expect an epiphany. I was watching a street musician in Boston, this saxophonist who'd set up near Faneuil Hall, and something about the way he played made people stop mid-stride. Not because he was technically perfect, he wasn't, but because he looked like he was exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was supposed to do. Money piled into his case, not because he was trying to extract it from passers-by, but because people wanted to participate in what he was creating. He was aligned, he was attracting, and he was achieving, all while looking like he was having the time of his life. That image stuck with me because it violated everything I'd been taught about success requiring suffering, about good things coming to those who hustle until they burn out, about achievement being a war you wage against yourself and the world. The reason most people never experience this kind of ease isn't because they're lazy or lack ambition. It's because they're running on outdated software, operating from a paradigm that treats life like a zero-sum game where you have to fight for every inch. But here's what nobody tells you until you stumble into it yourself. There's a completely different way to move through the world, one where your desires and your reality start speaking the same language, where opportunities don't feel like things you have to chase down and tackle, but rather like doors that swing open just as you approach them. This isn't mystical nonsense or privilege talking. It's about understanding how alignment actually works at a practical, implementable level. Let's start with what alignment actually means, because the word gets thrown around in self-help circles until it's almost meaningless. True alignment isn't about forcing yourself to be positive or pretending you don't want what you want. It's the state where your conscious desires, your unconscious beliefs, and your daily actions are all pointing in the same direction. Think about what happens when they're not aligned. You say you want financial abundance, but you feel guilty spending money on yourself. You claim you want a relationship, but you've organized your entire life around being self-sufficient. You talk about wanting to start a business, but you've never mentioned this dream to anyone who could actually help you. These aren't character flaws, they're alignment problems, and they create an internal tug-of-war that exhausts you before you even begin. The fascinating thing about alignment is that you can feel it in your body before your mind catches up. You know that sensation when you're doing something and it feels effortless, not because it's easy, but because you're not fighting yourself while doing it? That's alignment. Conversely, you know that grinding, teeth-clenching sensation when you're forcing yourself to do something that makes sense on paper but feels wrong in your gut? That's misalignment, and no amount of discipline or willpower will make it sustainable. I learned this the hard way when I spent 3 years in a career that looked perfect from the outside. Impressive title, good salary, respect from peers, but every morning I had to give myself a pep talk just to get out of bed. I thought I needed more motivation, more coffee, more grit. What I actually needed was to admit that my daily reality was completely misaligned with who I was becoming. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is the part that changed everything for me. Alignment isn't something you find, it's something you create through a series of small, honest choices. It starts with getting brutally real about what you actually want, not what you think you should want, not what would make your parents proud or impress your friends, but what makes you come alive. This is harder than it sounds because most of us have been trained to dismiss our genuine desires as impractical or selfish or naive. We've learned to translate our wants into acceptable versions. Instead of saying, I want to write novels, we say, I want to be more creative. Instead of, I want to travel for 6 months, we say, I should take more vacations. These translations create misalignment from the start because you're already negotiating with yourself before you've even begun. Once you've identified what you actually want, the next step is examining the beliefs you hold about whether it's possible for you. This is where most people get stuck, because we carry around these invisible operating systems installed by our families, our cultures, our past experiences. You might consciously want wealth while unconsciously believing that money corrupts people or that you're not the type of person who gets rich. You might want recognition while secretly believing you're not talented enough to deserve it. These contradictions don't make you flawed, they make you human, but they will absolutely sabotage your progress until you surface them and decide whether you still want to keep them running in the background. The process of identifying these hidden beliefs is like becoming a detective of your own mind. Pay attention to the buts. I want to start a business, but I don't have enough capital. I want to write a book, but nobody would want to read it. I want to ask her out, but I'm not attractive enough. Everything after the but is usually a belief masquerading as a fact, and beliefs can be changed once you see them clearly. This doesn't mean positive thinking your way past real obstacles. It means distinguishing between actual limitations and stories you're telling yourself about limitations. Now, here's where the concept of attraction enters the picture, and I need you to forget everything you've heard about vision boards and manifesting for a moment. Real attraction isn't about putting out cosmic wish lists. It's about becoming the kind of person who naturally resonates with the opportunities, people, and circumstances that align with your goals. This is both more scientific and more magical than the standard manifestation advice would have you believe. Think about how magnets work. They don't strain or effort or try really hard to attract metal. They simply are magnetic, and metal responds to that property. When you're truly aligned, when your internal and external realities match, you become magnetic in a similar way. You start noticing opportunities that were always there but invisible to you. You start meeting people who seem to show up at exactly the right time. Coincidences start stacking up in ways that feel almost eerie. Skeptics will call this confirmation bias, and they're partially right, but they're missing the point. Whether you call it resonance, frequency, or simply paying attention to what matters, the effect is the same. You start attracting what you're aligned with. But attraction also requires you to create space for what you want. This is the part that trips people up because it feels counterintuitive. If you want something, shouldn't you be doing more, trying harder, pushing further? Sometimes yes, but often what you actually need is to clear out what's blocking the flow. If you want a relationship, but every evening is packed with activities that keep you from meeting anyone new, you're not going to attract a partner no matter how aligned you are. If you want creative success, but you never protect time for your creative work, the universe has nowhere to deliver what you're asking for. Creating space isn't passive. It's one of the most active things you can do. It means saying no to good opportunities so you can say yes to great ones. It means disappointing some people so you can show up fully for the right people. It means leaving room in your calendar for serendipity. There's also a quality of attention that comes with attraction that most people overlook. When you're deeply aligned with something, your attention shifts from scanning for problems to scanning for possibilities. This isn't naive optimism. It's a practical rewiring of your perceptual filters. Your brain receives something like 11 million bits of information per second, but you can only consciously process about 40 bits. That means your mind is constantly deciding what to show you and what to filter out, and this decision is based largely on what you've trained it to look for. If you're constantly focused on what's wrong, what's missing, what's unfair, your brain will obligingly serve you endless evidence of those things. If you train your attention to notice resources, connections, and opportunities, your brain will start highlighting those instead. Same reality, completely different experience. The shift from forcing to allowing is where achievement with ease finally becomes possible. Notice I didn't say achievement without effort. Ease doesn't mean everything is effortless. It means you're not working against yourself while you work toward your goals. There's a huge difference. Think about swimming downstream versus upstream. Both require you to swim, but one works with the current and one works against it. Most people are swimming upstream without realizing there was another direction available. Achievement with ease requires a fundamental reorientation from pushing to pulling. When you push, you're forcing outcomes through sheer will and determination. This works for a while, and our culture celebrates it. But it's not sustainable, and it makes success feel like something you have to white-knuckle into existence. When you pull, you're drawn forward by genuine desire and alignment. You're still taking action, often lots of it, but it doesn't deplete you in the same way because you're moving towards something that energizes you rather than away from something that drains you. Let me give you a concrete example. I know someone who spent years trying to build a consulting business through cold outreach, networking events, and constant self-promotion. She was working 70-hour weeks and barely making enough to survive. Then she shifted her approach. Instead of trying to convince people they needed her services, she started creating content about the problems she loved solving. Instead of attending every networking event, she went only to gatherings that genuinely interested her. Instead of working with anyone who would pay her, she got selective about clients whose missions aligned with hers. Within 6 months, her income doubled. Within a year, she had a wait list. The work didn't get easier, but it stopped feeling like a battle. She'd moved from pushing to pulling, and everything changed. This is the paradox of achievement with ease that confuses people. It's not about doing less, it's about doing what's aligned with such consistency that momentum builds naturally. It's about making decisions from a place of resonance rather than fear or obligation. It's about trusting that when you're truly aligned, the path will reveal itself, even if you can't see the whole route from where you're standing. But let's address the elephant in the room, the one that makes people dismiss this entire approach as privileged or unrealistic. What about people who don't have the luxury of waiting for alignment, who need to pay bills, who have responsibilities, who live in circumstances that don't allow for following your bliss? This is a fair question, and it points to a crucial misunderstanding about how this works. Alignment isn't about quitting your job to backpack through Europe or only doing what feels good in the moment. It's about finding ways to align within your current circumstances while creating conditions for greater alignment over time. Maybe you can't quit your job, but can you shift how you approach it? Can you find aspects of the work that do resonate with you and focus more energy there? Can you use your off hours to build skills or connections that align with where you want to go? Can you start making small choices that honor your values even in an environment that doesn't? Alignment is fractal. You can practice it at any scale, in any situation. Every choice you make either moves you toward alignment or away from it, and those choices compound over time. The other critical piece is understanding that ease doesn't mean absence of challenges. Life will still present obstacles, setbacks, and difficulties. The difference is in how you relate to them. When you're aligned, challenges feel like problems to solve, rather than evidence that you're on the wrong path. When you're misaligned, even small obstacles feel like signs that you should give up. This distinction is everything. I've had projects that were incredibly difficult but felt right the whole way through, and I've had projects that were objectively easier but felt like slogging through mud because they weren't aligned with who I was or where I wanted to go. There's also a timing element to attraction and achievement that requires patience and trust, two qualities our instant gratification culture doesn't cultivate well. Seeds don't become plants overnight. Ideas don't become businesses immediately. Skills don't develop in a weekend. But when you're aligned and taking consistent action, there's a gestation period happening beneath the surface that isn't visible yet. This is when most people quit, right before the breakthrough, because they can't see evidence of progress. They're judging their results in days or weeks when the actual timeline is months or years. I think about the bamboo plant that spends 5 years developing its root system underground before it suddenly shoots up 90 feet in 6 weeks. If you judge that plant's progress by what you could see above ground for those first 5 years, you'd think nothing was happening. But everything was happening, just not in a way that was immediately visible. Your aligned actions are like that. They're building foundation, creating connections, developing capacity that will support rapid growth when the time is right. But you have to trust the process enough to keep going during the invisible phase. One of the most powerful tools for maintaining alignment is developing what I call a personal resonance practice. This is different from goal setting or affirmations. It's a regular check-in with yourself about whether what you're doing still feels aligned with who you are and where you want to go. Things change. You change. What aligned with you 6 months ago might not align with you now, and that's not failure, that's growth. But if you're not regularly checking in, you can end up far down a path that's no longer right for you, wondering why everything feels so hard. My resonance practice is simple. Every week, I ask myself 3 questions. What energized me this week? What drained me? What do I need more of or less of to feel aligned? These questions help me course correct in real time rather than waiting until I'm completely burned out or miserable to make changes. Sometimes the answers point to small adjustments, like I need to schedule more unstructured time, or I should delegate this particular task. Sometimes they point to bigger shifts, like this project isn't serving me anymore, or I need to have a difficult conversation with someone. But the practice keeps me honest about whether I'm living in alignment or just talking about it. Another crucial element is surrounding yourself with people who support your alignment rather than undermine it. This doesn't mean cutting off everyone who challenges you or only spending time with yes people. It means being intentional about who has access to your time, energy, and inner world. Some people will celebrate your growth and cheer you on. Others will feel threatened by it and consciously or unconsciously try to pull you back to who you used to be. Some people will resonate with your aligned self, and new connections will form easily. Others will feel increasingly out of sync as you change, and that's okay. Not everyone is meant to be in your life forever. The hard truth is that as you align more deeply with yourself, you will outgrow people, places, and situations that used to fit. This can be lonely and painful, but it's also necessary. Trying to maintain relationships and commitments that no longer align is like trying to wear clothes from 10 years ago that don't fit anymore. You can force yourself into them, but it's uncomfortable and it restricts your movement. At some point, you have to update your wardrobe, and the same goes for the company you keep and the environments you inhabit. Let's talk about the role of intuition in all of this, because it's impossible to discuss alignment without addressing that quiet inner knowing that most of us have been trained to ignore. Your intuition is your internal guidance system, and it's constantly giving you information about whether you're aligned or not. The problem is that we've learned to override it with logic, shoulds, and other people's opinions. We make spreadsheets and pro-con lists and ask everyone else what they think we should do, and then we wonder why we feel disconnected from our choices. Learning to trust your intuition doesn't mean ignoring facts or making impulsive decisions. It means giving equal weight to what your gut is telling you, alongside what your mind is telling you. Sometimes your intuition will guide you toward things that don't make logical sense yet, and this is where faith comes in. Not religious faith necessarily, but faith in your own inner knowing. Faith that there's intelligence in your body and your emotions and your instincts that your conscious mind hasn't caught up with yet. I've made some of my best decisions by honoring intuitive hits that made no sense on paper. Moving to a city where I didn't know anyone, ending a relationship that looked perfect from the outside. Starting a project with no clear monetization strategy. Each time, the logical part of my brain was screaming that I was making a mistake. Each time, something deeper knew it was right. And each time, the path revealed itself in ways I couldn't have predicted or planned for. This doesn't mean every intuitive hit is correct, or that you should ignore practical considerations. It means developing enough trust in yourself to explore the whispers, not just the shouts. The relationship between action and alignment is another area where people get confused. Some people think alignment means waiting for everything to feel perfect before taking action. Others think it means taking massive action regardless of how it feels. The truth is somewhere in between. Aligned action is action that feels like a yes in your body, even if it also feels scary or challenging. It's action that moves you toward what you want rather than away from what you fear. It's action that feels generative rather than depleting. You can usually tell the difference by paying attention to your energy. Actions that are aligned tend to generate energy, even if they're difficult. You might be nervous about giving a presentation, but if it's aligned, there's an underlying current of excitement and aliveness. Actions that are misaligned tend to deplete energy, even if they're easy. You might be good at something and people might pay you well for it, but if it's not aligned, every session leaves you feeling drained and disconnected. The practice of aligned action also means being willing to pivot when something isn't working. Too many people confuse commitment with rigidity. They think that changing course means they failed or gave up, so they keep pouring energy into things that clearly aren't resonating. But aligned action requires flexibility. It requires being honest about what's working and what isn't. It requires the humility to admit when you were wrong about something or when circumstances have changed. The goal isn't to stick with your original plan no matter what. The goal is to keep adjusting until you find what flows. There's also a quality of worthiness that underlies all of this that we need to address directly. Many people struggle with alignment and attraction, not because they don't know what they want or how to get it, but because they don't believe they deserve it. This shows up in subtle ways. You say you want more money, but you don't raise your rates. You say you want respect, but you accept treatment that undermines you. You say you want love, but you keep choosing people who are emotionally unavailable. These aren't conscious choices. They're patterns running beneath your awareness, and they're rooted in beliefs about what you're worthy of receiving. Unwinding these worthiness issues is some of the deepest work you can do, and it's not something you can just think your way through. It requires examining where these beliefs came from, whose voices they are, and whether you still want to let them run your life. It requires practice in receiving without deflecting, in accepting compliments without minimizing them, in letting good things happen without waiting for the other shoe to drop. It requires developing evidence that you are worthy simply because you exist, not because of what you achieve or who approves of you. One practice that helped me immensely was learning to celebrate small wins as evidence of my worthiness, rather than dismissing them as luck or timing or not enough. Every time something good happened, instead of immediately moving to the next goal, I would pause and acknowledge that I had attracted this, I had aligned with this, I had created conditions for this to happen. This might seem like a small thing, but it rewired my relationship with receiving. It helped me build a track record of evidence that good things do happen for me, that I am capable of creating what I want, that the universe isn't something I have to fight. The intersection of alignment, attraction, and achievement is where magic happens. And by magic, I mean the kind of synchronicities and opportunities that seem too perfectly timed to be random. You think about someone, and they text you. You need a specific resource, and it appears through an unexpected channel. You take a chance on something, and it works out better than you imagined. These aren't miracles. They're what happens when you're operating in alignment and paying attention. But you have to be present enough to notice them. If you're constantly rushing, worrying, or focused on what's not working, you'll miss the signals. If you're so attached to a specific outcome that you can't see alternative paths, you'll walk right past opportunities. Presence and flexibility are prerequisites for experiencing the ease that comes with alignment. You have to be here now, available to what is, rather than lost in regret about the past or anxiety about the future. This brings us to the role of surrender, which is perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of this entire approach. Surrender doesn't mean giving up or being passive. It means releasing your death grip on how things have to unfold. It means doing your part and then trusting that the rest will work itself out. It means acknowledging that you control your actions but not their outcomes, and finding peace with that limitation. The paradox is that the more you can surrender, the more power you actually have. When you're rigidly attached to a specific outcome, you miss opportunities that might be even better. When you're trying to control every variable, you exhaust yourself and create resistance. When you can hold your desires lightly, taking aligned action while remaining open to how things unfold, you create space for solutions and opportunities you never could have engineered yourself. I've watched this play out countless times in my own life. The jobs I got weren't the ones I thought I wanted, but turned out to be exactly what I needed. The relationships that didn't work out made space for better matches. The projects that failed taught me skills I used in future successes. None of this would have been possible if I'd been so attached to my original plans that I couldn't adapt to what was actually happening. Another dimension worth exploring is the role of environment in supporting or undermining your alignment. Your physical space, your digital space, the media you consume, the conversations you participate in. All of these shape your internal state more than you probably realize. If your environment is chaotic, cluttered, or filled with negativity, maintaining alignment becomes exponentially harder. If your environment reflects and supports who you're becoming, alignment becomes easier. This doesn't mean you need a perfect minimalist apartment or that you should only consume positive content. It means being intentional about what you're surrounding yourself with and how it's affecting you. Maybe that means finally cleaning out the closet full of clothes from a past version of yourself. Maybe it means unfollowing accounts that make you feel inadequate. Maybe it means creating a workspace that inspires you rather than depresses you. These environmental shifts might seem superficial, but they have profound effects on your ability to maintain alignment. The digital environment deserves special attention because it's so pervasive and yet so invisible to us. The average person spends hours a day consuming content, and most of it is designed to trigger fear, outrage, envy, or inadequacy because those emotions drive engagement. If you're trying to align with abundance and ease while constantly consuming content about scarcity and struggle, you're swimming against a powerful current. This doesn't mean putting your head in the sand about real problems. It means being selective about what you allow into your consciousness and how much time you give it. Let's also address the relationship between rest and achievement. Because our culture has convinced us that rest is something you earn after you achieve, rather than something that enables achievement. This is backwards. Rest isn't the reward for hard work, it's the foundation that makes sustainable achievement possible. When you're exhausted, depleted, and running on fumes, you can't access the clarity, creativity, and intuition that alignment requires. You go into survival mode, making decisions from fear rather than vision. Building rest into your rhythm isn't lazy or indulgent, it's strategic. It's during rest that your unconscious mind processes information and makes connections. It's during rest that your nervous system resets and your body repairs itself. It's during rest that you gain the perspective to see whether you're still aligned or whether you've drifted. Some of my biggest breakthroughs have come not during intense work sessions, but during walks, naps, or conversations where I wasn't trying to figure anything out. There's also something to be said about the role of play in all of this. Play is how you reconnect with what brings you alive. It's how you remember that life isn't just about achievement and productivity. It's how you access states of flow where you lose yourself completely in an activity. When was the last time you did something just because it was fun, with no thought to whether it was useful or productive or beneficial? For many people, it's been years, and that absence of play creates a flatness in life that makes alignment harder to access. The financial dimension of alignment deserves specific attention because money is where many people's alignment breaks down completely. They want financial abundance while harboring deep suspicion of money or wealthy people. They desire security while feeling ashamed of charging what they're worth. They dream of freedom while making choices that keep them trapped in scarcity. Money is neutral. It's a tool and a resource, but we layer it with so much meaning and so many contradictory beliefs that it becomes almost impossible to align with it clearly. Getting aligned around money requires examining all the stories you've inherited about what money means, who gets to have it, what it says about you if you have it or don't have it. It requires distinguishing between your values and the values of a consumerist culture that equates spending with success. It requires being honest about your actual relationship with money rather than the relationship you think you should have. And it requires developing a felt sense of sufficiency, of having enough, which is radically different from either scarcity or greed. One practice that shifted my relationship with money was tracking where my money went, not to judge or restrict myself, but to see whether my spending aligned with my values. I found I was spending significant amounts on things that didn't actually matter to me, while being stingy about things I claimed were priorities. That awareness alone started shifting my patterns. I began spending more freely on experiences and learning, and less on stuff that cluttered my space. I started valuing my time differently and charging accordingly. I stopped making financial decisions from fear of scarcity and started making them from a place of aligning with my values. The relationship between giving and receiving is another area where alignment matters enormously. Many people are great at giving, supporting others, being generous, but terrible at receiving. They deflect compliments, refuse help, feel uncomfortable accepting gifts. This creates an imbalance that blocks flow. Alignment requires being as open to receiving as you are to giving, understanding that both are essential parts of the same cycle. When you block receiving, you're not being humble or selfless. You're interrupting the natural exchange of energy that allows abundance to circulate. Conversely, some people are great at receiving, but give nothing back. They take from others, from opportunities, from resources, without contributing. This also creates imbalance, and eventually the well runs dry. True alignment recognizes that giving and receiving are not separate acts but a continuous flow, and you need to participate in both directions for the system to work. This doesn't mean keeping score or making sure everything is exactly equal. It means staying attuned to the natural rhythms of exchange. As we talk about achieving with ease, it's important to distinguish between ease and comfort. Comfort is about staying where you are, avoiding challenge, maintaining the status quo. Ease is about moving through challenge without unnecessary resistance. Growth is inherently uncomfortable because it requires you to stretch beyond your current capacity, but it doesn't have to be tortuous. There's a difference between productive discomfort, the kind that comes from learning and expanding, and destructive discomfort, the kind that comes from forcing yourself down paths that aren't right for you. Learning to recognize this difference is crucial. Productive discomfort has an edge of excitement to it, even when it's scary. You're nervous, but you want to do it. You're uncertain, but you're curious about what might happen. Destructive discomfort feels heavy, obligatory, like you're betraying yourself. You might be able to push through it for a while, but it's not sustainable, and it doesn't lead anywhere you actually want to go. The role of failure in an aligned life also needs reframing. When you're aligned, failure doesn't feel like evidence that you're on the wrong path. It feels like feedback about what needs adjusting. It's data, not destiny. You can fail at something and learn from it, and pivot without your sense of self or your vision being destroyed. When you're misaligned, failure confirms your worst fears about yourself and becomes a reason to quit. This is why alignment is so important. It gives you resilience in the face of setbacks because you're grounded in something deeper than any single outcome. I want to return to something I mentioned earlier that deserves deeper exploration: the idea that you become what you're aligned with. This isn't metaphorical, it's actual. The things you focus on, the beliefs you hold, the people you surround yourself with, the choices you make every day, all of these shape who you are at a neurological level. Your brain literally rewires itself based on what you repeatedly think and do. This is both terrifying and empowering because it means you're always becoming something. The only question is whether it's intentional or accidental. When you're intentional about your alignment, when you're consciously choosing what to move toward and what to move away from, you're directing your own evolution. You're not at the mercy of circumstances or conditioning. You're actively participating in creating who you become. This doesn't mean you can control everything or that you won't face challenges, but it means you have agency in how you respond to those challenges and what you make of them. The spiritual traditions have understood this for millennia, that what you practice, you become, that attention is the most powerful force available to you, that your inner state creates your outer experience. Modern neuroscience is confirming what the mystics knew, that consciousness shapes reality in ways we're only beginning to understand. You don't have to believe in any particular spiritual framework to benefit from this understanding. You just have to recognize that you're not a fixed entity, but a process, and processes can be directed. This brings us back to where we started, to that saxophonist in Boston who wasn't trying to make something happen, but was simply being what he was, fully, unapologetically, and letting that draw in what matched his frequency. That's the endpoint of this entire journey of alignment, attraction, and achievement. Not arriving at some destination where everything is perfect and easy, but becoming someone who moves through life in alignment with who they are, attracting what resonates with that truth, and achieving what matters to them without the exhausting fight against themselves. The shift from striving to thriving, from forcing to flowing, from pushing to pulling, this is available to you right now. Not someday when you've figured everything out or when circumstances are different, but in this moment with whatever you're facing. It starts with one honest choice, one aligned action, one moment of trusting yourself over the voices that tell you it can't be this simple. It compounds over time until you look back and barely recognize the person you were, the one who thought everything had to be hard, who believed good things happened to other people, who couldn't imagine that life might actually want to work with you rather than against you. That saxophonist isn't special or lucky or privileged in ways you're not. He just figured out something you're figuring out right now, that ease isn't something you achieve, it's something you align with. And once you do, everything changes. Here's what most people never realize. The more you chase success, the more it runs. But when you align first, everything starts moving toward you. You don't need more effort, you need clarity, trust, and the courage to stop forcing what's meant to flow. If this video helped you see success differently, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's been pushing way too hard. When you align with who you're becoming, achieving your goals becomes not just possible, but natural.